Beneath the quiet hills of Turkey lies a hidden city carved 18 stories deep. This is not a legend, but a real place called Derinkuyu, one of many vast underground networks that challenge everything we think we know about human history. By the end of this journey, you will see the compelling evidence that our ancestors may have survived a global cataclysm by moving entire societies underground. What kind of event could force thousands of people to live in the dark for generations? And how did they build a civilization in the bedrock? What does their incredible ingenuity tell us about our own future? How much of our past remains buried, waiting to be discovered? These underground cities were marvels of engineering, not just holes in the ground. Think of the planning required to carve out a space for thousands of people, complete with everything needed for life. Fresh air was a priority, so they built deep ventilation shafts that reached all the way to the surface, providing a constant, invisible lifeline. They dug their own wells, tapping into the groundwater to ensure a supply independent of the world above. There were sprawling areas for storing food, spaces for livestock, and even churches carved directly into the stone. The most striking feature, however, was the defense. Massive, circular stone doors weighing hundreds of kilograms could be rolled across key passageways, sealing entire sections of the city from the inside. This was a designed ecosystem, a self-contained world built to endure. The sheer scope of this work reveals a society with a deep, shared understanding of stonework, architecture, and communal survival. This was not a panicked, temporary reaction. The evidence in the rock itself shows expansion over centuries, with new levels and rooms added generation after generation. This points to a long-term strategy, a conscious decision to move civilization into the earth. What kind of threat could justify such a monumental, multi-generational effort? What terrifying reality lurking on the surface could convince an entire people that their future lay in the perpetual darkness below? The answer may be written not in their stone walls, but in the sky above them. The design of these cities speaks to a specific and terrifying kind of fear. It was not a fear of other people alone, for they built defenses against invaders. It was a deeper dread of the sky itself, of the very air they breathed. What kind of event could force entire populations to abandon the sun for a life in the bedrock? The theories are as vast as they are frightening. Some scientists point to a cataclysmic event around 12,800 years ago, a time when our planet may have been struck by fragments of a comet. This hypothetical impact, known as the Younger Dryas event, could have instantly triggered a miniature ice age. Imagine a world where global firestorms raged, followed by a sky so thick with ash and dust that sunlight vanished for years. The surface would have become a frozen, barren wasteland, incapable of supporting life. Other possibilities are equally grim. Massive volcanic eruptions could have plunged the world into a perpetual volcanic winter, poisoning the atmosphere. Perhaps it was a period of intense solar radiation, making exposure to the open air a lethal risk. Or maybe it was a combination of disasters, a cascade of catastrophes that rendered the surface world a death trap. The geological record seems to support this grim picture. In layers of soil and ice corresponding to this era, we find evidence of widespread burning, signs of catastrophic flooding, and a sudden, dramatic shift in global climate. These were not anomalies. They line up precisely with the timelines of the most intensive underground construction. The people who built Derinkuyu and places like it were not hiding from a passing storm. They were building arks, sealed environments designed to weather a planetary crisis that could last for generations. Every feature of their subterranean world, from the deep wells to the massive stone doors, points to a civilization preparing for a long, dark winter. To understand the scale of their achievement, we must venture into the most famous of these underground worlds, the labyrinthine city of Derinkuyu. The story of Derinkuyu's rediscovery sounds like something from a fable. In 1963, a local man was simply renovating his home in the Cappadocia region. He knocked down a wall, only to find a hidden chamber behind it. Curiosity led him to explore further, and that single room opened into a dark passageway, which then branched out into an incredible subterranean metropolis, lost to the world for centuries. This was not a small shelter, but a vertical city descending 18 stories deep into the volcanic rock, a labyrinth capable of sheltering up to 20,000 souls. To walk through its rediscovered halls is to witness a masterpiece of survival engineering. The air inside remains fresh, thanks to dozens of ventilation shafts skillfully engineered to draw air from the surface without revealing the city's location. Deep wells tap directly into the groundwater, providing a secure and independent water source even if the world above was poisoned or besieged. There were sprawling kitchens with carved-out hearths, areas for pressing wine, and chapels with vaulted ceilings, all speaking to a community determined to maintain a semblance of normal life. They even built stables for their animals deep within the earth. The most haunting features are the massive, circular stone doors. Each one weighs half a ton, yet is perfectly balanced to roll smoothly across a corridor, sealing it shut from the inside. You can still see the grooves in the rock today. This was a city designed to be sealed off completely from the outside world. Every aspect of its design, from the strategic air vents to the communal spaces and formidable defenses, reveals a society with a profound understanding of structural engineering and a deep-seated need for communal living under extreme duress. It forces us to confront a staggering possibility. If one city of such immense scale could remain hidden for so long, how many other underground networks are still waiting, silent and undiscovered, beneath the very ground we walk on? This question naturally draws our attention to another colossal complex just a few miles away, the interconnected city of Kaymakli. Just a few miles from Derinkuyu, another underground world sprawls horizontally through the earth. Kaymakli is the sprawling counterpart to Derinkuyu's vertical depth, a labyrinth extending across 8 known levels, though only 4 are accessible today. Its design philosophy is entirely different, emphasizing a wide, interconnected network of tunnels and chambers rather than a deep descent. The most astonishing theory suggests Kaymakli and Derinkuyu were not isolated refuges but parts of a single, integrated system, potentially linked by a tunnel stretching 9 kilometers. This implies a coordinated regional survival plan, a subterranean highway allowing movement and mutual support between 2 entire cities hidden beneath the hills. The layout of Kaymakli reveals a society deeply concerned with long-term livability. Life was organized around massive central ventilation shafts, which served as the literal heart of each level, ensuring a constant flow of fresh air to even the most remote chambers. The walls are studded with thousands of carefully carved niches, each one designed to hold a simple oil lamp, illuminating the darkness and creating a semblance of home. They built large, open communal spaces, recognizing that social bonds were as vital to survival as food and water. The presence of dedicated wineries and rows of enormous, barrel-sized storage jars speaks to a clear, pragmatic focus. This was a community preparing not for a brief emergency, but for a prolonged period of isolation, storing enough wine, oil, and grain to last for years, perhaps even generations. Every carved stone in Kaymakli whispers of a people who are not merely reacting to a crisis, but executing a well-considered plan. This was not a panicked dig for shelter. It was the implementation of a survival blueprint refined over time. The sheer sophistication of its design forces a profound question. How did they accomplish such a monumental feat of engineering with what we assume were simple tools? The logistics of carving these cities out of solid rock are almost beyond comprehension. The sheer scale of these cities forces us to reconsider the capabilities of their builders. Carving out an entire civilization from solid bedrock required more than just determination. It demanded an intimate knowledge of geology and structural engineering, all accomplished with the most basic of tools. Their primary implements were simple iron chisels, heavy stone hammers, and picks, wielded by generations of workers who painstakingly excavated millions of tons of rock. The secret to their success lay in the very ground beneath their feet. Cappadocia is composed of a unique volcanic rock called tuff, a material that is soft and relatively easy to carve when first exposed, but which hardens significantly upon contact with air, forming a remarkably stable and durable building material. This natural concrete allowed them to create multi-story structures deep underground without the constant threat of collapse. The engineers of this subterranean world solved problems that would challenge modern architects. They had to ensure the entire complex remained structurally sound, which meant calculating the thickness of walls and support pillars to bear the immense weight of the rock above. They designed a network of ventilation shafts with astonishing precision. These were not just random holes, but carefully placed chimneys that created a natural convection current, drawing stale air up and out while pulling fresh, clean air down to the deepest levels, all while the shaft surface openings were cleverly disguised to avoid detection. Water management was another triumph. They dug their own deep wells, tunneling straight down through hundreds of feet of rock to tap into pristine underground aquifers, creating a self-sufficient water supply completely isolated from the polluted or controlled surface world. Walking through these corridors today, you can still see the evidence of meticulous pre-planning. The passageways are perfectly aligned, the rooms are distributed in a logical pattern for community living, and the chisel marks on the walls show a consistent, skilled technique. This was not a haphazard digging project born of panic. It was a deliberate, generations-long endeavor, a master plan executed with unwavering purpose over centuries. Every carefully carved step, every strategically placed air shaft, and every hidden water source speaks of a society that looked at a coming catastrophe and responded not with fear, but with breathtakingly organized ingenuity. Who were these master planners, and what knowledge did they possess that allowed them to envision and execute such a profound retreat from the world above? The identity of these master builders is a ghost in the stone, who possessed the knowledge and the will to carve entire cities from the earth. The historical record offers whispers, not answers. Later inhabitants, early Christians fleeing Roman soldiers, certainly took refuge here, carving crosses into the walls and holding services in the underground chapels. Yet the sheer scale of the original construction suggests a far older and more powerful hand at work. Some scholars point to the Phrygians, an ancient kingdom known for their rock-cut monuments. Others look to the mighty Hittite Empire, a Bronze Age superpower that collapsed around the same time as many other civilizations, a period of widespread chaos that hints at a global catastrophe. The Hittites were known to build sophisticated underground structures, and their sudden disappearance from history coincides eerily with the timeline of the most intensive subterranean construction. But the original architects may be even more ancient, a lost civilization whose name we no longer remember. the evidence for this lies in the cities themselves. The deepest, most foundational levels show a different style of carving, a more archaic and robust technique than the work found in the upper chambers. This suggests the core of the city was built by one people and then expanded and modified over centuries, even millennia, by others. Christian symbols are etched over older pagan markings. A single ventilation shaft might have been used by Hittite engineers, Phrygian refugees, and Byzantine Christians, one after another. This layering of use tells a profound story. The knowledge of these underground sanctuaries was a secret carefully guarded and passed down through the ages. It was a survival blueprint preserved by generation after generation who understood, on some deep level, that the safety of the surface world was an illusion. The true identity of the first builders remains one of history's most compelling cold cases. But if we cannot yet name them, we can step into their world and ask a more intimate question. What was it actually like to wake up, to live, and to sleep in a city of perpetual night? The world beneath the surface was a society governed by routine and sound. 20,000 people living in perpetual twilight could not afford chaos. Every day would have followed a strict rhythm, a necessary cadence to prevent despair and maintain order. The low hum of constant activity filled the air, the sense of baking bread and burning oil lamps drifting through the interconnected tunnels. In designated communal kitchens, teams would have prepared simple, hearty meals from the vast stores of grain and dried legumes, their work illuminated by flickering light from countless wall niches. The sound of children learning their lessons in a carved-out classroom, their voices echoing softly, would have been a powerful symbol of a future worth preserving. Even in confinement, they maintained a system of governance, with leaders likely meeting in central halls to allocate resources and resolve disputes. Guards remained posted at the massive stone doors, not just watching for external threats, but ensuring the internal peace upon which their survival depended. The psychological toll of living without the sun for months or even years would have been immense, a silent battle against a deep, primal dread. They fought this darkness with community and faith. The evidence of their spiritual life is everywhere, most clearly in the underground churches. These were not just places of worship, but vital anchors for the human spirit. The silence of the underground was broken by the sound of prayer. Deep within the labyrinth, on the 7th level of Derinkuyu, lies a church carved directly from the living rock. Its ceiling arches high above in a perfect vault, its floor plan laid out in the shape of a cross, with sturdy columns supporting the weight of the entire city above it. This was not a hidden shrine built in secret, but a central pillar of the subterranean world. The presence of such a meticulously crafted sanctuary tells us something profound about its builders. In a time of existential crisis, they invested immense effort not just in survival, but in salvation. These chapels and baptismal fonts were as vital to their existence as the ventilation shafts and grain stores. They provided a framework for meaning when the world above had seemingly ended, a place to gather and reaffirm that their struggle had a purpose beyond mere existence. Within these candlelit chambers, the community could find solace, preserve their sacred texts, and pass their traditions to the children who had never seen the sun. This was the ultimate act of defiance against despair. They were not just preserving their bodies, they were guarding their very souls, ensuring that their culture and identity would not be extinguished by the long darkness. The spiritual resilience nurtured in these rooms was the invisible fuel that powered their physical endurance, a force as critical to their survival as the water that flowed from the deep wells they so ingeniously engineered. Water was the pulsing heart of the entire underground world. Without it, the deepest shelter would become a tomb within days. The builders understood this fundamental truth, and their solution was a masterpiece of hydroengineering. They bypassed the treacherous surface entirely, carving deep, vertical shafts straight down through hundreds of feet of solid rock to tap into pristine underground aquifers. These were not simple holes in the ground, but fortified lifelines. The wells were often located in central, highly secure courtyards, shielded from potential contamination and guarded as the city's most precious asset. Imagine the sound of a bucket dipping into that cool, dark water, a sound that meant life could continue for another day. In other parts of the complex, they demonstrated a different kind of ingenuity. They carved intricate channels along the walls and ceilings to capture every precious drop of seepage, channeling the natural moisture of the earth into carved cisterns where it could be stored and filtered. This constant, quiet collection meant that even if a well were somehow compromised, the city still had a reserve. Control over this vital resource would have been absolute, a duty falling to the most trusted leaders. The person who managed the water allocation held the fate of 20,000 souls in their hands. This intricate, redundant water system proves they were not just digging for shelter. They were building a self-sufficient biosphere designed to endure for generations. Securing this lifeline, however, was only one part of a much larger, more comprehensive strategy for survival, a strategy that transformed these cities into virtual fortresses. These monolithic stone doors were the ultimate deadbolt, each massive disc, painstakingly carved from the same volcanic rock as the city itself, was engineered with a terrifying elegance. Set into a recessed groove in the floor and perfectly balanced on a central pivot, a single person could roll a door weighing half a ton smoothly across a corridor, sealing it with a final, resonant thud. But this was not a passive barrier. A small, precisely drilled hole in the very center of the stone transformed it into an active killing ground. From the safety of the sealed side, a defender could thrust a spear or a lance through this aperture, targeting anyone trying to force their way in, all while remaining completely protected. This was defensive architecture refined to a brutal science. It speaks of a society that had contemplated the exact mechanics of an invasion and had designed their entire world around stopping it. The labyrinth itself was the next layer of this defense. Beyond the main corridors, the pathways became a confusing maze of narrow, twisting tunnels. An invader who managed to bypass a stone door would find themselves in a claustrophobic nightmare. They would be forced to move single file, their vision limited, their movements constricted, while defenders who knew every turn and hiding place could strike from the shadows. Some passages led only to dead ends, perfect traps where a group could be ambushed and eliminated. Others concealed hidden rooms where the most vulnerable citizens could wait in absolute silence until the danger passed. Every element of the design, from the grandest door to the smallest disguised alcove, was part of a single, integrated defense system. This was not a panicked reaction to a vague fear. This meticulous, multi-layered defensive strategy points to a very specific and deeply understood threat. The builders were not just afraid of being found, they were preparing for a determined, organized enemy capable of mounting a sustained assault on their subterranean fortress. Who or what could have inspired such a profound and comprehensive dread? The massive stone doors were not just for stopping invaders, they were for sealing out the world. This forces a difficult question. Were these cities designed for a war against other people, or for a war against the planet itself? The chilling answer appears to be both. The formidable defenses speak of a tangible, human enemy, one capable of mounting organized assaults. Historical records from later periods show these refuges were used during invasions, from marauding armies to religious persecutions. People were definitely hiding from other people, Yet the sheer scale of these complexes, with their capacity to house thousands for generations, suggests a far more insidious and inescapable foe. You do not build a self-contained biosphere with its own water and air supply to hide from a passing army. You build it because the very sky has become your enemy. The volcanic rock of Cappadocia itself is a monument to a past apocalypse, formed by eruptions that once smothered this land in ash. What if that history repeated itself? A similar eruption could have triggered a volcanic winter, plunging the region into a deep freeze and blotting out the sun for years. Or perhaps it was a global climate catastrophe, like the dramatic cooling event scientists call the Younger Dryas, which would have made surface agriculture impossible. In such a scenario, the environmental disaster would have been the primary threat, but the ensuing collapse of civilization would have created a secondary, human one. Famine and desperation would have driven survivors to violence, turning the surface into a lethal landscape of poison and predation. The underground cities become the only logical response to a one-two punch of planetary disaster and human desperation. This dual-purpose design is the most compelling clue, suggesting the builders were not preparing for one single crisis, but for the complete and total unraveling of their world. And if this survival strategy was born of a global catastrophe, we should find its echoes far beyond the hills of Turkey. The same instinct to burrow for safety echoes across the globe. Far beyond the hills of Turkey, the ancient Etruscan city of Orvieto in Italy stands atop a vertical labyrinth, a hidden twin to the world below. Its foundations are not solid rock, but a honeycomb of more than 1,200 tunnels, silos, and staircases carved over 2,500 years ago. This was not a mere basement, but a complete underground mirror of the city above, with spaces for pressing olive oil, housing pigeons for food, and collecting vital water. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world in China's Yanqing district, entire villages were dug straight down into the earth. Families lived in courtyard homes sunken deep into the lowest soil, with rooms tunneling horizontally from a central pit, creating hidden communities invisible from the surface, designed as refuges from the relentless raids of nomadic tribes. And in the windswept Orkney Islands of Scotland, the stone village of Skara Bree presents a Neolithic mystery. This 5,000-year-old settlement consists of interconnected stone dwellings built into ancient rubbish mounds, half sunken into the earth for insulation and protection from the brutal North Atlantic storms. The roofs are long gone, but the stone beds, dressers, and central hearths remain perfectly preserved, showing a people who chose to live within the earth for generations. What does this recurring pattern tell us? From the volcanic rock of Turkey to the soft soil of China and the stone mounds of Scotland, cultures with no possible contact with one another all arrived at the same radical solution. They turned inward, away from the sky. The specific threats varied: a nomadic army here, a volcanic eruption, or a mini ice age there, but the response was universal. When the world becomes too dangerous, humanity's oldest refuge is the ground beneath our feet. This global tapestry of subterranean habitation points to a profound and unsettling truth about our past. Catastrophic events, whether climatic, geological, or human, are not rare anomalies in history, but recurring features of the human experience. Our ancestors did not just fear these events in abstract terms, they built their entire lives around preparing for them, investing generations of labor into carving out arcs of stone and earth. This shared architectural impulse across continents strongly suggests they were all survivors of a similar, harrowing reality, one where the surface of the planet periodically became uninhabitable. If so many disparate cultures, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, all felt the same compelling need to retreat underground, how many other lost refuges still lie buried, waiting to tell their story? Unlocking the age of these silent cities is like trying to read a book where the first chapters have been torn out. The soft volcanic tuff that made them so easy to carve presents a frustrating problem for modern science, as it fails to preserve the organic materials needed for precise radiocarbon dating. We cannot simply test the walls themselves. Instead, archaeologists become detectives, piecing together the timeline from the fragments left behind by the people who lived there. Pottery shards, lost coins, and the simple, worn-down tools abandoned in a forgotten chamber become our most vital clues. These artifacts paint a clear picture of intensive use during the Byzantine era, from roughly the 5th to the 10th centuries AD. During this period, Christian communities expanded the tunnels and carved their crosses into the walls, using the depths as a perfect refuge from relentless Arab invasions. But the story does not start there. The sheer, monumental scale of the foundational work points to a far older origin. Many researchers believe the first strokes of the chisel belonged to the Hittites, a Bronze Age empire that flourished over 3,000 years ago in the 2nd millennium BC. This suggests a chilling continuity. The city was not built once and forgotten. It was a survival tool, a blueprint passed down through the ages. Each generation that sought its shelter, from Hittites to Phrygians to Byzantines, understood its grim necessity, and in turn, they expanded and modified the labyrinth, adding their own layers to the structure. The deepest levels, those dark, silent chambers far beneath the later chapels and storerooms, are the most enigmatic. Their carving style is different, more robust and archaic. These are the original shelters, the ones that might have been sealed shut against that first, forgotten cataclysm. They hold the secrets not of a single invasion, but of a planetary emergency. This means the true age of these cities could span not just centuries, but millennia. How many times across the vast expanse of human history has the surface world become a place to be escaped? The answer is likely written in the deepest rock, waiting for us to learn how to read it. The story of these cities returning to our awareness is itself a tale of fortunate accidents. The rediscovery of Derinkuyu in 1963, when a man broke through a wall in his basement, is the most famous example, but it is far from the only one. Across Cappadocia, generations of farmers had known of strange, cool drafts emanating from certain spots in their fields, or had heard echoes from beneath their feet when they dropped a stone into a fissure. Many of the initial openings were found exactly this way, by locals who followed their curiosity into the darkness, often uncovering a single room that led to an entire forgotten level. For a long time, these were just local secrets, known only to the families who used them as cool storage cellars. It was not until the mid-20th century that the true scale of the discovery began to dawn on the wider world, prompting the first systematic archaeological missions. The challenge was immense. How do you map a city without digging it up? How do you see through solid rock? The answer arrived with new eyes in the form of ground-penetrating radar. This technology allows researchers to send harmless pulses of energy into the earth and read the echoes that bounce back, painting a ghostly image of hollow spaces, tunnels, and collapsed chambers hidden deep below. More recently, three-dimensional laser scanners have been deployed, sending millions of precise laser points into every corridor and room to create a perfect digital replica. These virtual models let scientists explore the entire city without ever setting foot inside, measuring angles and volumes with an accuracy that was once impossible. This non-invasive technology has been a revelation. It has confirmed that known sites like Derinkuyu and Kaymakli are not isolated wonders, but likely the central hubs of a vast, regional network of subterranean settlements, all potentially linked by a web of long blocked tunnels. Every new scan is like turning a page in a lost history book. The data reveals subtle clues everywhere. The patterns of tool marks on the walls can tell an expert which civilization did the carving and whether they used iron chisels or simpler stone tools. The layers of soot on a ceiling can be analyzed to determine how long a room was occupied. The slow, careful analysis of pottery fragments, animal bones, and even the ancient pollen trapped in the silt can reconstruct the diet, the economy, and the environment of the people who lived here. This work is painstakingly slow, a deliberate dance between discovery and preservation. The soft tuff is fragile, and a single misplaced step can damage a surface that has been untouched for 1,000 years. The primary goal is no longer just to uncover, but to understand and protect. These technological eyes are peering through the rock, revealing a hidden chapter of human resilience that is far grander and more complex than we ever suspected. And with each new discovery, a more profound question emerges. If these underground cities were the ultimate insurance policy against a shattered world, what does their existence and their eventual abandonment tell us about the world that eventually emerged from the long winter? These technological eyes see through solid rock. Ground-penetrating radar works by sending harmless pulses of energy deep into the earth, listening for the faint echoes that bounce back from hollow spaces and buried walls. It allows archaeologists to paint a ghostly map of entire cities without ever breaking the ground, revealing the outlines of collapsed tunnels and hidden chambers that have been silent for millennia. From high above, another tool surveys the landscape with laser precision. LIDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, is often deployed from aircraft. It fires millions of laser points at the terrain, stripping away the forest canopy and surface vegetation to create a perfectly detailed three-dimensional map of the ground itself. This technology can identify the subtlest of bumps and depressions, anomalies that are completely invisible to the human eye but often mark the location of a buried settlement or a hidden entrance. Meanwhile, nimble drones fly over the known sites, their cameras capturing high-resolution images of every crevice and rock formation, meticulously documenting the landscape and pinpointing the disguised openings of ancient ventilation shafts. The exploration continues inside the cities themselves, where three-dimensional laser scanners methodically capture every detail. These devices sweep their beams across the walls and ceilings, creating a perfect digital replica of the entire subterranean world. This virtual model is a revolution for preservation and study. Scientists can now explore these fragile environments from anywhere in the world, taking precise measurements of pillar thicknesses and tunnel angles, and even running simulations to understand ancient airflow and structural stresses. This non-invasive approach is the only way to protect these delicate sites. The soft volcanic tuff is incredibly fragile, and a single misplaced step can damage a surface untouched for 1,000 years. The goal is no longer just to uncover, but to understand and safeguard. The data streaming from these sensors is not just a window into the past, it is a survival blueprint with startling relevance for our own future. The same principles of creating self-contained, climate-controlled habitats, of managing water and air in a sealed environment, are directly applicable to plans for long-term space travel or for building resilient communities in the face of our own changing climate. The ancient engineers of Derinkuyu were solving problems we are only now beginning to face on a planetary scale. Their solutions, preserved in stone, are a quiet, enduring lesson in resilience. The silent, enduring wisdom of these subterranean cities speaks directly to the anxieties of our own time. They stand as monumental case studies in creating a closed-loop system, a self-sufficient world where every resource is meticulously managed. Their engineers perfected the art of survival with nothing more than stone tools and profound foresight, recycling air through deep shafts, harvesting every drop of water from wells and seepage, and managing waste to prevent disease in a confined space. This ancient blueprint for sustainability is now a source of inspiration for modern architects and engineers tackling the greatest challenges of our era. The principles used to ventilate Derinkuyu are being adapted for designs of ultra-efficient, climate-resilient buildings. The strategies for long-term food storage in Kaymakli's giant jars inform plans for disaster preparedness. Most strikingly, the entire concept of a sealed, self-contained habitat is the foundational model for proposals to build colonies on the Moon or on Mars, where future generations will live in an environment just as isolated and unforgiving as the world these ancient people sought to escape. In an age of escalating climate threats, potential pandemics, and geopolitical instability, these underground cities are a powerful reminder of a timeless human capacity, the drive to engineer our survival against overwhelming odds. They teach us that the most vital resources in any long-term crisis are not just food and water, but social cohesion and a shared, unwavering purpose. The builders understood that without a strong community, without trust and a common goal, their stone fortress would become a tomb. This practical wisdom is inseparable from the powerful legends that have grown around these places. Local folklore in Cappadocia is filled with tales of ancient giants who carved the first rooms, or of a long-lost race that retreated underground to escape a great fire from the sky. These are not mere fairy tales, but a profound cultural memory, an attempt to explain the inexplicable. The myths preserve the core truth of a catastrophic event and a miraculous survival, passed down through generations long after the original builders were gone. They remind us that our own civilization is not a permanent fixture, but a fragile construct. Its preservation demands the same foresight, the same commitment to cooperation, and the same deep respect for the systems that sustain life that those ancient engineers possessed in such abundance. A king's ransom in gold, sealed forever behind a stone door by a curse. This is one of the countless legends whispered about the silent cities. Folklore does not remember these places as shelters, but as realms of mystery and danger, where the boundary between history and myth becomes impossibly thin. In Turkish villages, parents still warn their children away from certain dark openings in the rock, speaking of the jinn, powerful, invisible beings said to inhabit the deepest, oldest chambers. Other tales speak of an ancient race, the first builders, who grew so accustomed to the dark that they never returned to the surface, their eyes having become too sensitive for the sun. They are said to still dwell there, guardians of forgotten knowledge. Then there are the stories of treasure, vast hoards of wealth hidden by kings or priests during times of invasion, protected by magical traps and spiritual guardians. A common thread runs through all these varied myths, a deep-seated memory of a great and terrible event. The legends often describe a time of a great fire in the sky, or a long, bitter winter that forced the people underground. This is not a random detail. It is the echo of a real, collective trauma, a cataclysm so profound it was woven into the very fabric of cultural memory long after the historical facts were lost. These stories are the human attempt to explain the inexplicable, faced with the staggering reality of an 18-story city carved into the bedrock. What else could later generations do but attribute its creation to giants, or to magical beings, or to kings with godlike power? The myths are not lies, they are a different kind of truth, a psychological and cultural record of a people confronting the awe-inspiring work of their own ancestors. This rich tapestry of legend makes the archaeologist's job incredibly difficult, yet profoundly important. How do you separate the historical blueprint from the magical story? The answer often lies in the patterns. When 5 different local legends from 5 separate villages all independently mention a period of prolonged darkness, it stops being a coincidence and starts being a clue. These oral traditions become a guide, pointing researchers toward the very real possibility of an environmental disaster that the science is only now beginning to verify. The folklore is not a barrier to understanding. It is the first draft of history written not in ink but in memory and wonder. And as long as these stories are told, the debate over why these cities were truly built will never truly be settled. This very debate is what keeps the mystery alive and vibrant. The traditional explanation, long held by many mainstream historians, is that these were straightforward refuges from human threats. The timeline fits perfectly with known periods of invasion, from Arab armies to Mongol hordes. It is a logical, grounded theory that requires no world-shattering events, only the grim and familiar reality of human conflict. Yet other researchers point to the design and ask a simple, haunting question. Why build so deep? Why create a world entirely self-sufficient, sealed off from the very air, if you are only hiding from an army that will eventually move on? This has given rise to more dramatic, cosmic theories. Could these cities have been a shield against the shrapnel of a disintegrating comet, a global firestorm raining from the heavens? Some even propose a gamma-ray burst, an invisible wave of radiation from a distant star explosion, which would have made the surface world lethally radioactive for decades. In this light, the massive stone doors were not just barricades, they were airlocks. While these grand theories capture the imagination, there are also more mundane, practical explanations. The stable, cool temperatures underground made them perfect for storing perishable goods like wine and grain, a kind of massive, natural refrigerator. They could have served as temporary summer residences, escaping the scorching Anatolian heat. Or perhaps they were sacred spaces for religious sects seeking absolute seclusion from the world, a place to worship in perfect, uninterrupted silence. The cataclysm survival theory is powerful, but its greatest weakness is the lack of a smoking gun. Skeptics rightly argue that evidence for a single, global disaster is largely circumstantial. The cities themselves show clear signs of being built and modified over many centuries, not in a single, panicked generation. They could have been multi-purpose structures, their primary function shifting with the needs of the age, used as a cool pantry in one century and a desperate refuge in the next. This ongoing, sometimes heated, debate is not a sign of failure. It is the engine of scientific discovery, pushing archaeologists to look deeper and geologists to re-examine the soil layers for new clues. It forces us to hold multiple possibilities in our minds at once, and it raises a tantalizing prospect. If these cities were part of a global survival strategy, then they should not stand alone. Their architectural principles might share a common, hidden language with other inexplicable megalithic sites around the world, from the polygonal walls of Sacsayhuaman to the impossible precision of the Giza Plateau. Perhaps they are all scattered pages from the same lost survival manual. The silent stones of Göbekli Tepe whisper a story just as profound as the underground cities. Located in the same region of Turkey, this 12,000-year-old complex of massive T-shaped pillars arranged in circles predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. Its discovery shattered the conventional timeline of human civilization, proving that hunter-gatherers were capable of staggering architectural feats. The timeline of its active use and its subsequent deliberate burial intriguingly overlaps with the proposed origins of the deepest subterranean levels. This is not a coincidence but a clue. Could Göbekli Tepe have been the spiritual heart of the very civilization that later engineered the underground refuges? Some researchers propose a compelling narrative, a sophisticated culture capable of erecting Göbekli Tepe as a grand ceremonial center, foresaw or experienced a cataclysmic event. In response, they turned their immense knowledge inward, trading their monolithic temples for sealed cities deep within the earth. The sophistication shared by both sites, one reaching for the sky and the other burrowing into the ground, suggests a single, lost chapter of human history. This was not a primitive society. It was an advanced culture with a deep understanding of astronomy, engineering, and community organization, a knowledge base that was nearly erased by disaster. The connections do not stop at the borders of Turkey. Look at the hypogeum of Halsaflieni on Malta, a labyrinthine, three-level underground sanctuary carved from solid limestone around 5,000 years ago. Its echoing chambers, known as the Oracle Room, possess unique acoustic properties that amplify sound in ways that could alter human consciousness, suggesting a deep spiritual purpose intertwined with its subterranean nature. In ancient Egypt, the Serapeum of Saqqara presents another parallel, a vast underground network of tunnels housing enormous, precision-cut granite boxes, each weighing over 70 tons. The function of these boxes remains one of archaeology's greatest enigmas, but their existence points to a culture with both the motive and the skill to manipulate the underground realm on a massive scale. What do these disparate sites, from Turkey to Malta to Egypt, have in common? They all represent a radical investment of labor and resources into the earth itself. This recurring pattern hints at a possible global network of knowledge, a shared architectural language born from a shared experience. Perhaps these cultures were not isolated in their genius, but were separate survivors of a common, global threat, each applying a similar survival blueprint in their own part of the world. Exploring these connections opens a speculative but thrilling field of alternative history, one where our ancestors' greatest monuments were not just tributes to their gods, but sophisticated responses to a planetary emergency they somehow endured. The decision to abandon the sun was a psychological wound passed from parent to child. A deep, generational fear of the open sky would have been woven into the fabric of their identity, a cultural memory of a world that had once tried to kill them. This inherited dread is physically manifested in every defensive feature, from the rolling stone doors to the hidden trap passages. It speaks of a people who expected the worst, who built their world around the assumption that the surface was a permanent threat. Yet, to focus only on their fear is to miss the greater story. These dark, silent cities are, paradoxically, breathtaking monuments to human hope. The same society that carved defenses against invaders also carved beautiful churches with vaulted ceilings. The same hands that fashioned spear holes in stone doors also carefully placed oil lamps in thousands of wall niches, pushing back the darkness not just with flame, but with a steadfast refusal to surrender their humanity. This is the powerful dualism etched into the rock, a permanent record of a civilization holding two powerful truths at once, a profound fear of the outside world and an unshakable faith in their own future. Their resilience was an active, daily practice. It is found in the evidence of classrooms where children were educated, in the communal kitchens where meals were shared, and in the meticulous governance that would have been essential to keep 20,000 people from descending into chaos. They chose to preserve their culture, their rituals, and their social bonds, understanding that these intangible things were as vital to survival as water and air. This mindset, this fierce commitment to life in the face of existential terror, transforms how we see the physical objects they left behind. A simple pottery shard is no longer just a piece of a jar. It is a fragment of a system that ensured no one would starve. A cross carved into a wall is not merely a religious symbol. It is a declaration that meaning and spirit could flourish even in perpetual night. Every artifact tells a dual story, one of a people who were desperately afraid, and yet who never, ever stopped building for a tomorrow they hoped to see. A simple clay loom weight tells a profound story. It was dropped in a corridor and never retrieved, a tiny, silent witness to the daily rhythms of a life lived in the dark. These are the artifacts that whisper to us from the dust, the scattered fragments of a society stripped down to its essentials. We find no gold, no jewels, no ornate sculptures. Instead, we uncover the humble tools of survival, pottery shards from large storage jars that once held grain and oil, simple grinding stones for milling flour, and metal chisels worn down from endless work on the stubborn rock. Each object is a testament to a community focused on pure function, where every resource and every ounce of labor was directed toward the collective good. The absence of luxury is deafening. It suggests either a remarkably egalitarian society where status meant nothing, or a more practical reality, that when the people finally emerged back into the sunlight, they took their few precious valuables with them, leaving only the heavy, utilitarian objects behind. Yet among these practical items, we find clear evidence of a rich inner life. Carved crosses and small, painted icons tucked into wall niches reveal that spiritual sustenance was as vital as physical nourishment. Faith was not an afterthought, it was a core pillar of their resilience, a light they carried within them to combat the external darkness. The true masterpiece, however, is not a single object you can hold in your hand. The most significant artifact is the city itself. Its very layout is a frozen blueprint of their priorities. Its engineered air shafts a permanent record of their intelligence, and its formidable defenses a stark confession of their fears. Every carved step and every rolling stone door is part of this non-perishable record, a society's soul cast in volcanic rock. Piecing together these clues, from the smallest pottery fragment to the grand scale of the architecture, allows us to do more than just guess about their daily lives. We can begin to assemble a timeline of the catastrophe itself. The layers of occupation, the styles of carving, and the types of artifacts found at different depths are like rings in a tree, marking the passage of time and the pulses of crisis and recovery. This material evidence is the key that can unlock the true scale of the disaster they faced and reveal how many times throughout history the surface world has forced humanity to seek refuge in the earth. The timeline of this ancient disaster is written in ice and stone. To reconstruct the event that forced populations underground, scientists have become detectives of the deep past, pulling clues from entirely different fields of study. Geologists drill deep into polar ice caps, extracting long cores that act as a frozen archive of Earth's atmosphere. Within these pristine layers, they search for telltale signs of catastrophe, like microscopic diamonds or elevated platinum, which can signal a comet's fiery encounter with our planet. They examine sediment from ancient lake beds, looking for layers of ash from continent spanning volcanic eruptions or sediment from catastrophic floods. Meanwhile, astronomers calculate the orbits of comets and asteroids backward through millennia, searching for a celestial culprit that may have strayed too close. The most crucial evidence, however, comes from the cities themselves. Archaeologists meticulously date the layers of occupation, analyzing pottery styles, tool technology, and radiocarbon dates from charcoal and bones to determine exactly when these subterranean worlds were first carved, expanded, and finally abandoned. When these independent lines of evidence are plotted on the same graph, a startling pattern emerges. They converge around specific dates, moments in history when the world seems to have broken. One of the strongest signals points to an event around 12,800 years ago, a period of sudden, intense cooling that coincides with the extinction of mammoths and other megafauna. Another convergence occurs around 1200 BC, the time of the infamous Bronze Age collapse, when every major Mediterranean civilization from the Mycenaeans to the Hittites mysteriously fell within a single generation. The construction phases of the deepest underground levels align eerily with these catastrophe horizons. This synthesized timeline suggests these cities were not built out of vague fear, but in direct response to a clear and present danger. They are the physical evidence of a societal collapse so complete that the only logical response was to move civilization into the earth. This remains a working hypothesis, a puzzle with many pieces still missing. The search for conclusive proof now drives researchers to the most unexpected places, from the genomes of ancient crops to the oral histories of isolated tribes, all seeking to answer one question: how many times has our world truly ended? The ground beneath our feet may be hollow with forgotten worlds. It is highly probable that many more of these subterranean cities remain completely undiscovered, hidden by centuries of silt and the slow creep of vegetation. Modern technology is now peeling back these layers of earth and time. Geological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have identified dozens of unexplained anomalies throughout Cappadocia, voids and tunnel-like structures that do not match any known geology. Satellite imagery adds to the mystery, revealing subtle patterns in the terrain and vegetation that hint at vast, man-made structures lying just beneath the surface. The potential scale of this hidden network was dramatically confirmed in 2014, when construction crews in the Turkish province of Nevşehir stumbled upon an entrance while clearing land for an urban renewal project. Initial probes revealed a sprawling complex with its own sophisticated ventilation system and extensive living quarters, potentially large enough to rival even Derinkuyu. This was not a lone, accidental find. It was a direct glimpse into an entire hidden landscape, a confirmation that our current maps of the ancient world are woefully incomplete. The search has now expanded far beyond Turkey. Researchers are meticulously scouring ancient texts and medieval maps, looking for cryptic references to lost underworlds. These documents sometimes speak of sealed gates leading to kingdoms beneath the mountains or cities of 1,000 caves. Such accounts, long dismissed as myth, are now being re-evaluated as potential guides to real, physical locations. Investigations are underway into rumored subterranean networks carved into the Caucasus Mountains, a region with its own deep history of conflict and cataclysm. Similar explorations are probing the high deserts of Central Asia and the remote valleys of the Andes in South America, where local legends tell of people who retreated underground to escape a great flood or a time of endless fire. Every one of these potential sites is more than just an archaeological prize. Each represents a critical new data point, a fresh opportunity to test the global cataclysm theory against hard evidence. Was the response to this ancient crisis truly a worldwide phenomenon? Did cultures separated by oceans arrive at the same desperate, brilliant solution? The next great discovery, the one that rewrites our history books, could be waiting just beneath the next hill, its secrets protected by nothing more than a thin layer of dust and stone. Earth's climate has never been a stable, gentle constant. Long before industrial emissions, our planet experienced violent natural swings that could reshape civilizations in a generation. A rapid cooling event, like the one scientists call the Younger Dryas, could have plunged fertile lands into a deep freeze, killing crops and freezing water sources solid. Conversely, a mega drought lasting decades could have turned vast regions to dust, evaporating rivers and lakes that communities depended on for survival. For ancient societies living on an agricultural knife's edge, these were not gradual changes. They were existential emergencies. A single failed harvest meant famine. Widespread famine bred desperation, conflict, and the complete collapse of the social order. In this light, the rolling stone doors of Derinkuyu were not just defenses against armies, but barriers against the chaos that follows when the climate itself turns hostile. The very design of these subterranean refuges points to a threat that was both inescapable and long-term. You do not build a generation-spanning ark to wait out a passing war. You build it to survive a long, dark winter imposed by the sky itself. The proof of this connection is emerging from the most unlikely of places, deep within ancient ice cores and the sediment of long-vanished lakes. Paleoclimatologists, the detectives of Earth's ancient weather, drill into glaciers and seabeds, extracting layered records that act as a timeline of the planet's atmospheric past. Within these pristine archives, they find evidence of precisely the kind of cataclysmic shifts that would make the surface uninhabitable. Layers of volcanic ash testify to eruptions that blotted out the sun. Traces of extraterrestrial elements, like microscopic diamonds and platinum, hint at comet impacts that could have triggered instant ice ages. When researchers cross-reference these climatic data points with the archaeological timelines of the underground cities, the alignment is startling. The periods of most intensive subterranean construction consistently coincide with known eras of extreme environmental stress. It seems our ancestors were not just hiding from other people, they were insulating themselves from the planet's own violent mood swings. This ancient story of adaptation rings with a sobering relevance for our own time. We are now the civilization facing a potential climate crisis, one of our own making. The underground cities stand as a silent, stark lesson. They are a monument to the fact that when the environment shifts dramatically, the only path to survival is through radical adaptation, technological ingenuity, and unwavering social cohesion. Their enduring stone is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure planetary upheaval, a powerful reminder that we too must look at the horizon and prepare for the long winter. These underground cities are far more than archaeological curiosities. They stand as timeless monuments to human resilience, challenging the comforting story that civilization moves in a straight line of constant progress. Their silent stone corridors whisper a different truth, that our world has faced near total collapse before, and that civilization has been forced to rebirth itself not from ashes, but from the deep, protective darkness of the earth. They are proof that our ancestors possessed a profound foresight, a breathtaking ingenuity, and a powerful communal spirit that allowed them to engineer their survival against forces that must have seemed utterly insurmountable. In an age of advanced technology and global connectivity, these ancient refuges deliver a humbling message. The comforts and stability of our modern world are fragile, a temporary arrangement that has been shattered before. The knowledge of how to survive a planetary cataclysm, encoded in the blueprints of these subterranean worlds, may be one of the most valuable inheritances we have from the deep past. As we surface from this exploration, we carry with us the enduring lesson of the underground cities. It is a lesson written not on paper, but in volcanic rock, a testament to the unyielding human spirit that even in the longest and darkest of times finds a way to endure, to hope, and to build for a future it may never see. If this journey into the depths of history has captivated you, we invite you to subscribe for more explorations into our forgotten past. We would love to hear your thoughts on these incredible survival sanctuaries in the comments below.